The rain felt like a personal vendetta that night. Heavy and cold, it soaked through Leo's black work shirt until the cheap fabric clung to his skin like a second layer of humiliation. He walked without direction, one arm wrapped around his torso, the other gripping the strap of his olive green canvas bag like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. The slum road stretched ahead, streetlights flickering weakly through the downpour, casting jaundiced pools on cracked pavement. He was crying openly now, no longer caring who saw. His dark hair hung in wet strands across his face, and his beige apron, the one they'd made him wear every shift, was still tied around his waist, damp and wrinkled. Black pants, cheap sneakers that squelched with every step. He looked exactly like what he was, a young man with nowhere left to go. 8 months. That's how long he'd worked at the Eclipse Lounge. 8 months of serving drinks to men who stared too long, who slid bills across the bar with suggestions attached, who thought a smile meant permission. 8 months of keeping his head down, doing his job, refusing everything else. It hadn't been enough. The job came with a room upstairs, barely bigger than a closet, but it was his. A mattress on the floor, a lamp, a lock on the door. That lock mattered. It meant he was a waiter, not merchandise. It meant he could say no and still have a place to sleep. Until tonight. He'd said no one too many times. The man who ran the club, tall, sharp-suited, always smiling like he knew something you didn't, had started bringing in new boys 3 weeks ago. Dancers, he called them. But Leo knew better. He'd seen the back rooms, heard the negotiations, watched money change hands for more than just drinks. He'd approached Leo last week. "You've got a good look," he'd said, leaning against the bar while Leo wiped down glasses. "Customers ask about you. You could make real money." Leo had declined politely. He'd persisted. Leo had declined again. Tonight, he'd stopped asking. "Pack your shit," he'd said, appearing in Leo's doorway without knocking. "You're done." "What? Why?" "You don't want to work, you don't stay." "I do work. Not the way I need you to." Leo had tried to argue, tried to explain he'd never agreed to anything beyond waitressing. But he'd already turned away, already called 2 of the security guards to escort him out. They'd given him 5 minutes to grab his things, then walked him down the back stairs, through the kitchen, and out into the alley where the rain had just started to fall. The door locked behind him. No severance. No apology. No second chance. Just rain. Leo walked because there was nothing else to do. No family to call, no friends close enough to show up at midnight. The little money he'd saved was in his bag, maybe enough for a week in a hostel if he was lucky. Maybe not. The streetlights overhead buzzed and flickered, some dead entirely, leaving long stretches of road swallowed by darkness. Cars passed occasionally, headlights cutting through the rain, but none of them slowed. This wasn't the kind of neighborhood where people stopped to help. Leo didn't blame them. He kept walking, one foot in front of the other, rain streaming down his face, mixing with tears he'd stopped trying to hold back. His throat ached. His chest felt tight. He'd worked so hard to keep his dignity, to draw a line and hold it, and it had cost him everything. That's when he heard it. The low hum of an engine slowing behind him. He didn't turn around. Men like him learned not to. But the sound didn't fade, it grew closer, louder, deliberate. The black luxury SUV pulled alongside him, sleek and massive, water beating on its polished surface like liquid glass. It was the kind of vehicle that didn't belong in a place like this. Too expensive, too clean, too powerful. The windows were tinted so dark he couldn't see inside. It matched his pace. Leo's pulse quickened. He walked faster. The SUV stayed with him. He stopped. It stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just the rain hammering the pavement and the quiet idle of the engine. Leo stood frozen, soaked to the bone, bag clutched against his chest, heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Then the back window lowered. Slowly. Deliberately. Inside sat a man in a tailored black suit, the kind of suit that cost more than Leo had made in a year. His shirt was crisp white, unbuttoned at the collar, no tie. His face was angular, hardened, with dark eyes that didn't blink, didn't soften, didn't look away. He had the kind of presence that filled a room even when he was sitting still. Dangerous. Controlled. Unmistakably powerful. And his scent, God, his scent. It hit Leo like a physical blow, cutting through the rain and the cold and the overwhelming smell of wet pavement. Cedar and smoke, dark and rich, with something underneath that made Leo's knees feel weak. It was the scent of an alpha. A dominant one. The kind that made omegas instinctively lower their heads and bare their throats. Leo's inner omega stirred, confused and terrified. He'd spent years suppressing his biology, learning to ignore the pull, the instinct to submit. But this alpha was different. His scent wasn't just strong. It was overwhelming. Commanding. It wrapped around Leo like a hand around his throat, not choking, just present. Demanding attention. The man didn't smile. He didn't lean forward. He just stared at Leo like he was deciding whether he was worth the trouble. Then he spoke. What happened? His voice was low, quiet, but it cut through the rain like a blade. It carried authority, the kind that came from being obeyed for so long you forgot anyone could say no. Leo's breath caught. He should have kept walking. Should have ignored him. Should have done what every survival instinct screamed at him to do. But he didn't. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the way he asked, not demanding, not pitying, just asking. Like he actually wanted to know. Leo turned to face him fully, rain pouring down his face, and for the first time that night, someone was looking at him like he mattered. His voice cracked. He swallowed hard, tried again. I lost my job. The man's expression didn't change. He studied Leo for another long moment, his gaze moving from his soaked uniform to the bag in his hands to the tears he couldn't hide. Get in, he said. Leo froze. It was late. The kind of night that taught people not to trust strangers in expensive cars. But he was already soaked, already broken, already out of options. And something in the alpha's eyes told him that saying no to this man might be the last mistake he ever made. Leo didn't get in the car. Not right away. He stood there in the rain, water streaming down his face, staring at the open door of the SUV like it was a trap waiting to spring. The interior was black leather, immaculate, dry. Warm air drifted out, carrying the scent of expensive cologne and something else, power, maybe. Control. And beneath it all, that devastating alpha scent that made Leo's omega whimper with longing he couldn't control. The man waited. He didn't repeat himself, didn't coax or persuade. Just sat there with that unreadable expression, one arm resting casually on his knee, watching Leo make a decision. I don't. Leo started, then stopped. I don't know you. No, the man agreed. You don't. Why would you help me? The alpha's jaw tightened slightly. I haven't decided if I am. The honesty of it startled Leo. Most men lied, promised safety, promised kindness, promised things they had no intention of delivering. This man offered nothing except a dry seat and a question. Leo looked down the empty road. Rain. Darkness. Nowhere to go. He got in. The door closed behind him with a solid, final thunk. The sound of the rain immediately muffled, reduced to a distant drumming against the roof. The warmth hit him all at once, and he realized he was shivering uncontrollably. The Alpha didn't look at him. He tapped twice on the partition separating them from the driver, and the SUV pulled smoothly back onto the road. "Where are we going?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You tell me." Leo didn't have an answer. The Alpha turned to face him then, really face him, and Leo saw him clearly for the first time. Dark hair, slightly damp at the edges, like he'd been out in the rain recently. Strong features. A scar, thin and white, cutting across his left eyebrow. Maybe 40, maybe older. It was hard to tell. Men like him didn't age the same way. They hardened. "You worked at the Eclipse Lounge," he said. Not a question. A statement. Leo's heart stopped. "How did you?" "The apron." He nodded toward Leo's waist. "And I know the uniform." Leo looked down. The beige apron was still tied around him, the Eclipse logo stitched in faded black thread across the front. He'd forgotten he was still wearing it. "I'm taking it off," he said quickly, fingers fumbling with the knot. "Leave it." Leo froze. "I want to see it when we get there," the Alpha added. "Get where?" But he'd already turned away, pulling out his phone, fingers moving across the screen with swift, practiced efficiency. He made a call, spoke in rapid Portuguese, too low for Leo to catch most of it. But he heard one word clearly: Eclipse. Leo's stomach dropped. "You're taking me back there?" It wasn't a question. It was dread. The Alpha ended the call and looked at him. "You don't want to go back?" "No." Leo swallowed hard. "They fired me. Threw me out. I'm not welcome there." "Who fired you?" "The manager. I don't know his real name. Everyone just calls him Senor." Something flickered across the Alpha's face. Not surprise. Something colder. "Why did he fire you?" Leo hesitated. This was the part that made him sound naive, stupid, like he didn't understand how the world worked. "Because I wouldn't." He trailed off, staring at his hands. "He wanted me to do more than serve drinks." Silence. "And you refused?" the Alpha said quietly. "Yes." "For how long?" 3 weeks. Maybe more. He started asking after he brought in the new boys. The Alpha leaned back against the seat, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What new boys?" "Dancers," Leo said, then corrected himself. That's what he called them. But they weren't just dancing. What were they doing? Leo didn't want to say it. Didn't want to be the one to spell it out. But the Alpha's gaze was steady, patient, waiting. "Entertaining clients," Leo said carefully. "In the private rooms. Upstairs. The same floor where I lived." The Alpha nodded slowly. His expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, tension that hadn't been there before. He pulled his phone out again, typed something, then put it away. "You lived above the club," he said. "They gave me a room when I started. It was part of the deal. I work the bar, I get a place to sleep. And when you wouldn't upgrade," his voice was flat, "they took the room." "Yes. Tonight." "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the rain-soaked streets sliding past. Leo couldn't read his face, couldn't tell if he believed him, if he cared, if any of this mattered to him at all. Finally, he spoke. "How long have you worked there?" 8 months. "Did you know what kind of place it was when you started?" I knew it was a nightclub. I knew it wasn't. Leo paused, searching for the right words. I knew it wasn't safe. But I needed work. And they promised me I'd just be serving drinks. That's all I agreed to. And you kept that agreement. I tried. You succeeded. The Alpha corrected him. That's why you're in this car. Leo looked at him, confused. I don't understand. He didn't answer right away. Just studied Leo with those dark, unreadable eyes. Then he leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. The Eclipse Lounge, he said slowly, is not just a nightclub. I know. No. You don't. His voice dropped lower. It's a front. Money moves through there. Boys move through there. Things that shouldn't happen happen. And someone is supposed to be making sure they don't. Leo's throat went dry. Who? The Alpha smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Me. The word hung in the air like a blade. Leo's hands tightened around his bag. He didn't know who this man was, but he suddenly understood why the SUV was so expensive, why his suit fit like that, why people probably crossed the street when they saw him coming. You own the Eclipse, Leo whispered. I own a lot of things. He sat back. The Eclipse is one of them. And if what you're telling me is true, then someone has been running my business like it's theirs. It's true, Leo said quickly. I swear I'm not lying. I know you're not. How? He gestured toward Leo. Because you're still wearing the apron. Because you're soaked and crying and you have nowhere to go. Because Omegas who lie don't usually end up walking alone in the rain. Leo flinched. Of course. Of course the Alpha had already figured out what he was. Leo had spent so long trying to hide it, suppressing his scent with cheap blockers, keeping his head down, pretending he was just another beta. But the rain had washed everything away. His scent would be unmistakable now. Sweet, desperate, utterly Omega. He could feel it rising off his skin, honey and something floral, thick and cloying. The scent of fear. The scent of submission. The Alpha's nostrils flared almost imperceptibly. His jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, hunger, maybe, or recognition. Then it was gone, smoothed over by that impassive mask. The SUV slowed. Leo looked out the window and felt his stomach lurch. They were back. The Eclipse Lounge rose in front of them, neon lights reflecting pink and blue across wet pavement. Music thumped faintly through the walls. People clustered near the entrance, smoking, laughing, oblivious. I can't go in there, Leo said, panic rising in his chest. Please. He'll do nothing. The Alpha opened his door. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. Why are we here? He looked at Leo one last time before stepping out into the rain. Because I want to meet the man who thinks he runs my club. Leo didn't move. The Alpha stood outside the SUV, rain already darkening the shoulders of his expensive suit, waiting. The door hung open. Music from the club pulsed through the night air, bass-heavy, relentless, the kind of sound designed to drown out conversations people didn't want heard. I can't, Leo said again, quieter this time. He leaned down, one hand on the doorframe. You can. And you will. He'll recognize me. He won't do anything. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Not while you're with me. Leo's hands trembled around his bag. Every instinct screamed at him to stay in the car, to ask the driver to take him anywhere else, to disappear into the rain and never look back. But he'd already made his choice when he got in. Already trusted the stranger with the hard eyes and the quiet threats. He stepped out into the rain. The Alpha closed the door behind him and started walking toward the club entrance. Leo hurried to keep up, his soaked sneakers splashing through puddles, apron still tied around his waist like evidence. He felt exposed, humiliated, like every person smoking outside would recognize him as the boy who'd been thrown out an hour ago. But no one looked at him. They looked at the Alpha. The conversations near the entrance died mid-sentence. Cigarettes paused halfway to mouths. A man in a tight red shirt actually took a step back. The two security guards at the door, both large, both tattooed, both usually unmovable, straightened immediately. "Señor Rios," one of them said, his voice tight. The Alpha, Rios, didn't acknowledge them. He just walked past like they were furniture. Leo followed, head down, heart hammering. The guards didn't stop him, didn't even look at him. Their eyes stayed locked on Rios until he disappeared through the entrance. Inside, the music was a living thing. It pressed against Leo's chest, vibrated through his bones, made thinking difficult. The club was packed, bodies moving on the dance floor, strobe lights cutting through artificial fog, bartenders working double time behind the long marble counter where Leo had spent 8 months of his life. The same counter where he'd been told he wasn't doing enough. Rios moved through the crowd like a shark through water. People parted without realizing they were doing it, some instinct telling them to get out of his way. Leo stayed close, his wet uniform clinging uncomfortably to his skin, his bag clutched against his chest. He saw familiar faces, boys he'd worked with, customers he'd served. No one met his eyes. Either they didn't recognize him, or they were pretending not to. Then he saw him. "Señor." He stood near the VIP section, laughing at something a man in a gold shirt had just said. Tall, handsome in a practiced way, wearing a black suit that fit too well to be off the rack. His dark hair was slicked back, his smile easy and confident. A man who believed the world bent to his will because it always had. He hadn't noticed them yet. Rios stopped at the edge of the dance floor, hands in his pockets, surveying the club with the expression of someone inspecting property they'd forgotten they owned. His jaw was tight. His eyes moved methodically from the bar to the VIP section to the back hallway where the private rooms waited. "Which one?" he asked without looking at Leo. Leo didn't need to ask what he meant. His throat felt like sandpaper. "The one in the black suit. By the couches." Rios nodded slowly. "Stay behind me." He started walking again. Leo's pulse spiked. This was happening. This was actually happening. He wanted to grab Rios's arm, to tell him he'd changed his mind, that they could just leave, that confronting Señor wouldn't fix anything. But his feet kept moving, following him through the crowd toward the man who'd thrown him into the rain like garbage. Señor saw them when they were 10 feet away. His smile didn't falter, if anything, it widened. He excused himself from the man in gold and stepped forward, arms slightly spread in a welcoming gesture. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice smooth and practiced. He still didn't recognize Leo. His eyes were locked on Rios, trying to place him. Rios stopped directly in front of him. "You run this club?" "I manage it, yes." Señor's smile turned professional. "Are you looking for a table?" "VIP section is full tonight, but I can." "I'm not looking for a table." Something in Rios's tone made Señor pause. His smile held, but his eyes sharpened. "Then what can I do for you? You can tell me who gave you permission to fire my staff." The smile cracked. Señor's gaze flicked briefly to Leo, then back to Rios. Recognition dawned slowly, followed immediately by confusion. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Camilo Rios. The name hit like a physical blow. Señor's face went white. The confidence drained out of him so fast Leo almost felt sorry for him. Almost. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Señor Rios. I didn't know you were. You didn't know I was coming. Camilo finished. That's the problem. Of course. Of course. I just meant, Señor straightened, trying to recover, trying to pull the professional mask back into place. His eyes darted around the club, looking for help that wasn't coming. Is there something wrong? Has there been a complaint? I assure you, whatever it is, I can. Him. Camilo gestured toward Leo without looking away from Señor. Why isn't he working? Señor finally looked at Leo properly. Really looked. His expression shifted through several emotions at once, surprise, irritation, anger, then something close to panic when he realized Leo was standing next to the owner of the building. Señor cleared his throat. He wasn't a good fit for the team. Why not? He didn't want to take on additional responsibilities. What responsibilities? Señor hesitated. The music pounded around them. People were starting to notice the conversation, the tension. The man in gold had disappeared. Two of the bartenders had stopped working to watch. The club offers more than just drinks, Señor said carefully. We provide entertainment. Premium services for premium clients. He wasn't interested in participating. He's a waiter, Camilo said flatly. His contract specified waitressing. Señor blinked. Yes. But. So you fired him for refusing to break his contract? It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Camilo's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the music like a knife. You pressured an employee to provide sexual services. He refused. You evicted him and threw him into the street with no severance and no warning. Is that accurate? Señor's jaw worked. With respect, Señor Rios, you don't understand how this business. I understand perfectly. Camilo took one step closer. What I don't understand is who told you this was acceptable. No one told me. I run the club the way it needs to be run. The way it makes money. My money. Yes. Your money. Which I've been increasing every month by exploiting omegas who came here to work. Not to be sold. The accusation hung in the air. Señor's face flushed. That's not, these boys know what they're signing up for. They want the work. They make good money. He's the only one who ever complained. Because he's the only one who said no. Camilo's voice was ice. Because he's the only one naive enough to think a place like this runs on serving drinks. The words came out sharp, defensive. And the moment they did, Señor seemed to realize his mistake. His eyes widened slightly. He took half a step back. Camilo's expression didn't change. Turn the music off. What? Turn the music off. Señor looked around desperately, then signaled to someone Leo couldn't see. 10 seconds later, the music cut out. The silence was deafening. Every head in the club turned toward them. Camilo raised his voice just enough to carry everyone out. Now. No one moved. The crowd stared at Camilo like he'd spoken a language they didn't understand. Music still echoed faintly from the speakers, a ghost of the beat that had been shaking the walls moments before. Someone laughed nervously near the bar. A glass clinked. Camilo didn't repeat himself. He pulled his phone from his pocket, pressed a single button, and held it to his ear. His eyes never left Señor's face. "Clear the building," he said in Portuguese. "Everyone. 2 minutes." He ended the call. That's when people started recognizing what was happening. The security guards appeared first, not the 2 from the entrance, but others. 6 of them, maybe more. Materializing from the shadows like they'd been waiting for the order. They moved through the crowd efficiently, professionally, ushering people toward the exits with firm voices and firmer hands. "Let's go. Time to leave. Clubs closed. Everyone out. Now. Move." The crowd resisted at first, confused complaints, half-finished drinks abandoned on tables, a few angry shouts. But the guards didn't negotiate. Within 60 seconds, the dance floor was emptying. Within 90, the bar was clear. The man in gold grabbed his clutch and hurried toward the door without looking back. Leo stood frozen near Camillo, watching the club drain like water from a bathtub. Boys he'd worked with filed past, some still in their uniforms, others in the skimpy outfits Señor preferred for the premium entertainment. A few glanced at him. Most didn't. Señor's panic was visible now. His hands twitched at his sides. Sweat beaded along his hairline despite the air conditioning. "Señor Rios, please. If I've offended you in some way." "Quiet." Señor's mouth snapped shut. The last of the customers filtered out. The guards took positions at each exit, arms crossed, expressions blank. One of them locked the front door from the inside. The click echoed through the now silent club. Camillo surveyed the empty space, the scattered glasses, the fog machine still pumping mist across the dance floor, the neon lights reflecting off mirrors and chrome. He walked slowly toward the bar, hands still in his pockets, taking in every detail. Leo followed because he didn't know what else to do. Behind them, Señor stood rooted to the spot, his confidence completely shattered. Camillo stopped at the bar, running one finger along the marble countertop. "How much does this place make in a month?" Señor stammered. Approximately 200,000 reis, Señor Rios. Sometimes more, depending on. And how much of that comes from liquor sales?" Silence. "How much?" Camillo repeated. "Maybe 30%. So 70% comes from the boys." Señor swallowed hard. "The entertainment services are very popular. High-end clients. Discretion guaranteed. It's a lucrative model that." "I didn't ask for a pitch." Camillo turned to face him. "I asked for numbers." 70%. "Yes. Approximately." "And you pay the boys what percentage?" 20% of what they earn. Plus tips. 20% of money they earn for you by selling themselves. They're independent contractors. They choose their clients. They set their boundaries. It's all consensual." Camillo's laugh was cold. "Except when it's not. Except when an Omega says no and you throw him out. He wasn't one of the entertainers. He was an employee. Who had a contract. Who did his job. And you punished him for not doing a job he never agreed to." Camillo stepped closer. "Where's his room?" "Upstairs. 2nd floor. But his belongings are." "Show me." Señor looked like he might be sick. "Of course. Right this way." He led them toward the back hallway, past the bathrooms and the storage room, to a narrow staircase Leo knew too well. He'd climbed those stairs every night for 8 months, exhausted and aching, just grateful to have a door he could lock. The 2nd floor was quieter, dimmer. A long corridor with doors on either side. Some were open, revealing small rooms barely big enough for a bed. Others were closed, sounds filtering through, muffled voices, music, the rhythmic creak of bed frames. Leo's chest tightened. He'd lived next to this. Heard it every night. Senor stopped in front of a door near the end. This was his. Open it, Camillo said. Senor pulled out a key ring, selected one, unlocked the door. It swung inward. The room was empty. Not just empty of Leo's belongings, completely stripped. The mattress was gone, the lamp, even the curtain rod above the window. Just bare walls and a concrete floor. Where's his stuff? Camillo's voice was dangerously quiet. I had it removed. Standard procedure when someone is terminated. Where is it now? In storage downstairs. I can retrieve it if. You threw him out with nothing. Camillo's voice was flat. He took a bag. I saw him. One bag. After 8 months of work. One bag. He turned to Leo. Is that true? Leo nodded, unable to speak. Camillo stared at the empty room for a long moment. Then he walked back into the hallway, pulled out his phone again, and made another call. I need a full audit, he said. Eclipse Lounge. Tonight. Every contract, every payment, every boy currently working. I want names, ages, how long they've been here, and what they were promised when they started. He paused, listening. No. I'll wait. Bring the team now. He ended the call and looked at Senor. You're going to sit downstairs and answer every question they ask. And if I find out you've been trafficking minors or coercing Omegas into this, they won't find your body. Senor's face went gray. I swear, everyone here is legal. Everyone consents. I run a clean operation. You run nothing. Camillo's voice was ice. You're a manager who forgot who he works for. And you're about to learn what happens when you abuse that position. He turned to one of the guards. Take him downstairs. Lock him in the office. He doesn't leave, he doesn't make calls, he doesn't talk to anyone until my people arrive. Yes, Senor Rios. The guard grabbed Senor's arm. Senor opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it. He let himself be led away, shoulders slumped, the fight completely gone. When they were alone in the hallway, Camillo finally looked at Leo. You lived here for 8 months. Leo nodded. Listening to that every night? He gestured toward the closed doors, the muffled sounds. Yes. And you still said no? I'm not, Leo's voice cracked. I'm not that. I'm just a waiter. You're more than that. He said it simply, like it was fact. Most people break. You didn't. Leo didn't know what to say. He felt hollowed out, wrung dry. Everything that had happened in the past 2 hours felt surreal. The rain, the SUV, the confrontation, watching Senor crumble in front of the man he'd been stealing from. What happens now? He asked quietly. Camillo looked down the hallway, then back at him. Now I clean up the mess. And you decide what you want. What I want. You can't stay here. The room's gone, the job's gone. But you're owed 8 months of back wages for the work you did, plus severance for illegal termination, plus compensation for emotional distress. He pulled out his phone, typed something. Call it 50,000 reis. Enough to start over somewhere else. Leo's knees nearly buckled. 50,000. Or, Camillo continued, you stay. Help me figure out who else has been hurt here. Testify if needed. And I'll make sure you're protected while you do it. Leo stared at him. Why would you do that? Because you're the only person in this building who told the truth. He met Leo's eyes. And I need to know how deep this goes. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, Leo made a choice. I'll help. Camillo nodded once. Then let's go back downstairs. My people will be here soon. And you're going to tell them everything. The office was smaller than Leo expected. Senor sat behind a cluttered desk, hands folded in front of him, face pale. Two guards stood at the door, arms crossed, expressions carved from stone. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and expensive whiskey, a half-empty bottle catching the light from the desk lamp. Camillo leaned against the wall near the window, watching the street below where black sedans were beginning to arrive. His people. The audit team he'd called. Leo could see them through the glass, men and women in dark suits carrying laptops and file boxes, moving with the efficiency of soldiers. Leo sat in a metal folding chair across from Senor, still wearing his damp uniform, apron tied at his waist like shame he couldn't shed. His bag rested at his feet. Everything he owned in the world. Camillo hadn't spoken in 5 minutes. The silence was worse than shouting. It pressed down on the room like weight, made breathing difficult. Senor kept glancing at him, then away, then back again, waiting for something. Permission to speak. Permission to explain. Anything. Finally, Camillo turned from the window. How long have you worked for me? He asked. Senor cleared his throat. 3 years, Senor Rios. And in those 3 years, how many times have I visited this location? This is the first time. The first time. Camillo let that sit. So you thought I didn't care what happened here? No. No, I thought I was doing what you wanted. Maximizing profit. Growing the business. By turning it into a brothel? It's not a brothel, Senor said quickly. It's a gentleman's club with additional services. High-end. Discreet. Completely legal. Legal. Camillo's voice was flat. You keep using that word. But legal doesn't mean right. And it doesn't mean authorized. I was given operational freedom. The previous regional manager said. I don't care what he said. Camillo pushed off the wall, crossed to the desk. I care what you did. How many boys are currently working the upstairs rooms? Senor hesitated. 15. Maybe 16. You don't know? Some come and go. They're independent. How many are under contract like he was? Camillo nodded toward Leo. How many were hired to waitress and then pressured into more? Silence. How many? Camillo's hand came down on the desk, not hard, but sharp enough to make Senor flinch. I don't know. A few. Maybe 5 or 6 started as staff and transitioned. Transitioned. Camillo repeated the word like it was poison. That's a pleasant word for it. They wanted the work. The money is better. I didn't force anyone. Leo's hands clenched in his lap. The lie was so casual, so practiced. Like he told it so many times he believed it himself. He's sitting right there, Camillo said quietly. And he's going to tell me if you're lying. Senor's eyes darted to Leo. Leo held his gaze. There were others, Leo said, his voice coming out stronger than he expected. I wasn't the only one. There was a boy named Beatrice. He worked the bar with me for 2 months. Then one day he was upstairs. I asked him what happened. He said he didn't have a choice. That's not true, Senor cut in. Beatrice came to me asking for more hours. I offered him an opportunity, and he accepted. He was crying in the bathroom the next week, Leo continued. He said he needed the money. That you told him the bar wasn't making enough tips to keep him on full time unless he helped out upstairs. He's misrepresenting. Is Beatrice still here? Camillo asked. No, Senor admitted. He left about a month ago. Left? Or was fired? He stopped showing up. Camillo's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then looked at one of the guards. Find him. Full name, last known address, phone number. I want to talk to him tonight. The guard nodded and stepped into the hallway. Camillo turned back to Senor. Who else? I don't understand what you're... Who else did you coerce? Who else came here for legitimate work and ended up in those rooms because you threatened their jobs? No one. I swear. The others all knew what they were signing up for. Then you won't mind if I ask them. Camillo moved toward the door. Because my team is about to interview every Omega in this building. And if even one of them tells a story like his... He gestured to Leo. Then we're going to have a much longer conversation somewhere less comfortable. Senor's composure finally cracked completely. Please. Senor Rios. I was just trying to run a profitable business. The overhead on this place is enormous. The liquor license alone costs. I don't care about the overhead. Camillo's voice cut like a razor. I care that you used my money, my property, and my name to exploit Omegas who trusted you to honor their contracts. It was exploitation. He was homeless tonight. Camillo's voice was ice. Walking in the rain with nowhere to go because you threw him out for refusing to prostitute himself. That's not business. That's cruelty. The word hung in the air. Leo felt something shift in his chest. Someone was saying it. Someone was calling it what it was. After 8 months of being told he was naive, that he didn't understand how the world worked, that his boundaries were unreasonable, someone was saying he'd been right. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. One of the guards opened it. A woman in a gray suit stepped inside, carrying a tablet and a leather folder. She was maybe 50, with short silver hair and sharp eyes that took in the room in seconds. Senora Rios, she said, nodding. Gabriela. Camillo straightened. Status? We've secured all the files. Financial records, employment contracts, security footage for the past 6 months. The boys are being interviewed in separate rooms. We've also contacted legal counsel and local authorities to ensure everything is documented properly. Good. How many boys total? 23 currently on the premises. 19 are over 18. 4 are. She glanced at Senor, showing discrepancies in their documentation. Camillo's expression darkened. What kind of discrepancies? IDs that don't match their stated ages. One boy claiming to be 22 with a birth certificate that suggests he's 17. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Camillo turned slowly to face Senor. You hired minors? No. No, I checked every ID. If someone lied about their age, that's not my fault. You didn't verify. It wasn't a question. I did. I have copies of everything. If someone brought a fake ID, I had no way of knowing. You didn't verify. Camillo repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Because you didn't want to know. Senor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Gabriela cleared her throat. Should I contact the authorities about the minors? Immediately. And get them somewhere safe. Medical exams, counseling, whatever they need. I want a full paper trail showing we cooperated completely the moment we discovered the problem. Understood. She left, heels clicking down the hallway. Camillo looked at Leo. Did you know about the young ones? I suspected, Leo said quietly. There was a boy who looked too young. I asked him once how old he was. He said 19. But he looked like he was lying. Did you report it? To whom? Leo gestured towards Senor. He ran the club. And I was barely holding on to my own job. Camillo nodded slowly. You did what you could. I should have done more. You survived. That's enough. He moved to the door, then paused. I need you to write everything down. Every boy you remember who seemed coerced. Every conversation. Every threat. Every detail. He looked back at Leo. Gabriella will help you. Take your time. Be thorough. He looked back at Senor one last time. And then we're going to shut this place down permanently. Senor's face went white. You can't. This location generates. I don't care what it generates. It ends tonight. The interviews took 4 hours. Leo sat in a small room off the main hallway with Gabriella, writing everything he could remember. Names. Faces. Conversations whispered in bathrooms and back stairwells. Omegas who'd arrived hopeful and left broken. Omegas who'd smiled through tears. Omegas who'd stopped smiling altogether. His hand cramped after the first hour, but he kept writing. Gabriella asked questions occasionally, clarifying details, asking for timelines, making notes on her tablet with swift, efficient taps. She didn't interrupt unnecessarily, didn't rush. Just listened with the focus of someone who'd done this before. Outside the room, Leo could hear movement. Doors opening and closing. Muted conversations. The quiet shuffle of people being escorted through the building. The boys were being interviewed separately, each one assigned a member of Camillo's team. No one was allowed to leave until they'd given their statement. Around midnight, Gabriella's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then stood. I need to check on something. Keep writing. I'll be back. Leo nodded, flexing his fingers before picking up the pen again. He wrote about Beatriz, who'd cried in the bathroom and disappeared a month later. About Carlos, who'd been hired as a cocktail waiter and now worked the VIP rooms with dead eyes and a practiced smile. About the boy whose name Leo never learned, who'd looked 16 and insisted he was 19. He wrote about the night Senor had cornered him in the storage room, his voice friendly but his meaning clear. You could make triple what you're making now. Customers ask about you. You're wasting potential. He wrote about the way Senor had changed after he refused, how the shifts got longer, how his tips mysteriously decreased, how other staff members started avoiding him like rejection was contagious. He wrote about the Omegas who'd tried to warn him. Just do what he says. It's easier that way. Fighting only makes it worse. He wrote until his hand shook and his eyes blurred, and Gabriella returned with coffee and a sandwich Leo didn't remember asking for. Eat, Gabriella said gently. You've been at this for hours. Leo took the coffee but couldn't stomach the food. How many boys have you talked to? 17 so far. 6 more to go. And? Gabriella's expression tightened. And you weren't the only one. Not by a long shot. The confirmation should have made Leo feel vindicated. Instead, it just made him tired. Sad. Angry at himself for not doing more when he'd had the chance. The young ones, he asked quietly. All 4 are being taken to a safe house tonight. Medical exams tomorrow. We've contacted their families where possible. Gabriella paused. 2 of them are from out of state. They were recruited online with promises of modeling work. Leo's stomach turned. Modeling. Standard trafficking language. They show up, passports get held for safekeeping, suddenly they owe money for housing and transportation they never agreed to pay for. Gabriella's voice was clinical, professional, but anger simmered beneath it. By the time they realize what's happening, they're trapped. Did Senior know? He claims he didn't. But ignorance isn't a defense when you're running an operation like this. He should have known. He chose not to look. The door opened. Camillo stepped inside, still wearing the same suit, though his shirt was more wrinkled now, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked tired, not physically, something deeper. The kind of exhaustion that came from seeing things you couldn't unsee. How is he doing? He asked Gabriella. He's been very thorough. We have enough to build a strong case. Camillo nodded, then looked at Leo. I need you to come with me. Leo's pulse quickened. Where? Upstairs. One of the boys is refusing to talk unless you're there. Leo set down his pen. Which one? He wouldn't give his name. Just said he knew you. That you were kind to him. Leo stood, legs stiff from sitting so long. He followed Camillo out of the room, down the hallway, past security guards and audit team members moving through the building like surgeons through an infected wound. They climbed the back staircase to the second floor. The hallway was different now, empty, quiet. Doors stood open, revealing rooms in various states of disorder, unmade beds, scattered clothing, makeup kits abandoned on nightstands. The boys had been moved downstairs for the interviews. What remained felt like evidence. Proof of what this place really was. Camillo stopped at a door near the end, 3 down from where Leo's room used to be. He knocked softly. It's Rios. I have him with me. A moment of silence. Then a small voice. Okay. Camillo opened the door. Inside, sitting on the edge of a narrow bed, was a boy Leo recognized immediately. Young face, dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that hadn't been part of the club's dress code. He looked up when they entered, eyes red from crying. Leo, he whispered. Lucas. Leo moved into the room, keeping his voice gentle. Are you okay? Lucas shook his head. They're asking me questions and I don't know what to say. I don't want to get in trouble. You're not in trouble, Camillo said from the doorway. We're trying to help. But I lied on my application. I said I was 21. But I'm only 19. And if I tell them that, they'll know I used a fake ID and... Lucas. Leo sat down beside him. You're not going to get arrested for a fake ID. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Leo glanced at Camillo. He nodded slightly, permission to tell the truth. It's about making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else, Leo said. Senor is being investigated for exploitation. For pressuring Omegas into work they didn't agree to. For creating an unsafe environment. And we need to know who else was hurt. Lucas's hands twisted in his lap. I wasn't hurt. I chose this. Did you? Leo asked gently. Or did you choose waitressing and end up here because you had no other option? Silence. Then, quietly, he said I wasn't making enough in tips. That I was costing the club money. That if I wanted to stay, I needed to contribute differently. When was this? 2 months ago. Right after you started refusing the VIP room requests. Lucas looked up, tears spilling over. I saw what happened to you. How he treated you after you said no. So when he came to me, I didn't fight. I just said yes. Leo's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. You were brave. I needed the job. I needed the money. My mom is sick, and I send money home every week. And if I lost this job, I didn't know what I'd do. Where's home? Camillo asked. Bahia. Small town. No work. That's why I came to the city. And Senor knew this. Lucas nodded. He knew everyone's situation. He knew who was desperate. Who had debts. Who couldn't afford to say no. His voice dropped to a whisper. That's how he chose. The room fell silent. Camillo pulled out his phone, typed something. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, controlled. Lucas. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest. Did Senor, or anyone else in this club, ever physically force you to do anything? No. Not force. But... Lucas swallowed hard. He made it clear that refusing wasn't really an option. That Omegas who didn't cooperate didn't last. And I saw what happened to the ones who tried to leave early. Their pay got withheld. Their references disappeared. One boy tried to report him and suddenly he couldn't find work anywhere in the city. He blacklisted him. I don't know what you call it. I just know he ended up going back to his hometown with nothing. Camillo's jaw tightened. He looked at Leo. Did you know about this? I heard rumors. But no one would talk about it. They were too scared. Camillo turned back to Lucas. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Gabriella everything you just told us. You're going to get your ID situation sorted, I'll make sure it's handled. You're going to get paid everything you're owed, plus compensation for what was done to you. And then you're going to get out of this city and start over somewhere safe. Somewhere far from here. Lucas looked at Leo. Do you believe him? Leo thought about the empty club downstairs, the audit team, the way Camillo had dismantled Senor's confidence in minutes. The way he'd stopped his car in the rain for a stranger who had nothing to offer him. Yes, Leo said. I believe him. Lucas took a shaky breath. Okay. I'll write it down. By 3 in the morning, the Eclipse Lounge looked like a crime scene. Not because of violence, there had been none, but because of what the investigation had uncovered. File boxes lined the hallway outside Senor's office. Laptops glowed on every available surface. Gabriella's team worked in focused silence, cross-referencing documents, flagging discrepancies, building a case that would hold up in any court. Leo sat in the main club area, watching it all unfold. The neon lights had been turned off. The fog machine silenced. Without the music and the crowds and the artificial energy, the space looked smaller, sadder. Like a stage after the performance ended. Camillo stood near the bar, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Portuguese to someone who clearly didn't want to hear what he was saying. His voice was calm but unyielding. Final. I don't care what the revenue projections were. I don't care what you approved 3 years ago. The operation ends tonight. No. There's no discussion. Because I own the building and I'm telling you it's over. He ended the call without waiting for a response. Gabriella approached him with a tablet. We've completed all the interviews. 23 boys total. 14 were hired under false pretenses or coerced into services beyond their original contracts. 4 are minors. The remaining 5 claim they entered the arrangement voluntarily, but 2 of those are showing signs of trafficking indicators. What kind of indicators? Debt bondage. One boy owes the club 30,000 reis for housing and training fees he says he never agreed to. Another had his passport confiscated when he arrived from Colombia. He hasn't seen it since. Camillo's expression darkened. Where are their documents? Locked in Señor's desk. We found 12 passports. Only 6 match boys currently working here. And the other 6? Unknown. Could be boys who left. Could be something worse. The implication hung heavy in the air. Camillo set his phone down. I want forensic accounting on every transaction going back 3 years. Every payment to the boys, every client charge, every expense. If money is missing, I want to know where it went. Already in progress. But Señor kept 2 sets of books. One official, one hidden. We're working through the encrypted files now. How long? Few more hours. Maybe less. Camillo nodded. What about Señor? Still in the office. He's requested a lawyer. He can request whatever he wants. He's not leaving this building until we have everything we need. Gabriella glanced at Leo, then back at Camillo. There's something else you should know. What? 3 of the boys mentioned a regional manager who visits once a month. Collects cash payments. Never gives his name. They described him as older, well-dressed, with a scar on his left hand. Camillo went very still. Augusto. You know him. He was supposed to be overseeing operations in this district. Making sure locations stayed clean. Stayed legal. Stayed profitable. His voice was ice. Instead, he was collecting protection money and looking the other way. Should I add him to the investigation? Add him to everything. I want to know every property he manages, every deal he's touched, every person he's compromised. If he's doing this here, he's doing it elsewhere. Gabriella made a note. This is going to be bigger than one club. I know. Camillo looked around the empty space. That's why it has to be thorough. If I clean one location and ignore the rest, I'm just moving the problem. I need to burn it all down and rebuild correctly. Leo watched him from across the room. This was a man who'd built an empire. He could see it in the way his team moved, the way they deferred to him without question, the way a single phone call emptied a building. But he was also a man who'd stopped his car in the rain for a crying Omega he didn't know. Leo didn't understand him. Maybe that was the point. Gabriella left to coordinate with the forensic team. Camillo walked over to where Leo sat, hands in his pockets, exhaustion finally starting to show around his eyes. You should go home, he said. I don't have a home. He paused. Right. I forgot. It's fine. I can stay until... No. You've given us everything we need. The rest is just documentation. He pulled out his phone, typed something. I'm sending you to a hotel. Somewhere clean and safe. You can rest. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's payment for services rendered. You've been working as a consultant for the past 6 hours. He showed Leo the phone screen, a bank transfer confirmation. 50,000 reis. That's what I promised. Plus another 20 for the interview assistance tonight. Leo stared at the number. 70,000 reis. More money than he'd made in 2 years of work. I can't accept this. You already did. It's in your account. What account? I didn't give you my payroll records. Gabriella pulled them from Señor's files. He tucked the phone away. Consider it back pay for 8 months of putting up with his abuse. Leo's hands shook. This is too much. It's not enough. But it's a start. He gestured to one of the guards near the door. Raphael will take you to the hotel. Stay as long as you need. When you're ready to figure out what's next, call me. He handed Leo a business card, heavy paper, embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. What if I don't call? Leo asked. Then you don't call. The money's yours either way. You don't owe me anything. Why are you doing this? Camillo looked at him for a long moment. Because you walked away from everything rather than compromise who you are. Most people don't have that strength. The ones who do deserve to be protected. Not punished. I'm not special. I just... You walked through the rain with nowhere to go rather than sell yourself. In my world, that makes you extraordinary. He stepped back. Raphael will take care of you. Get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow if you want. Or never. Your choice. He turned to walk away. Camillo. He stopped. What's going to happen to the other boys? The ones who don't have anywhere to go. Same thing that's happening to you. Money. Housing assistance. Job placement if they want it. Therapy if they need it. No one gets thrown into the street. Not on my watch. Not anymore. And Señor? Camillo's expression hardened. Señor is going to learn that stealing from me is expensive. But stealing Omega's dignity? He shook his head. That's going to cost him everything. Leo believed him. Raphael appeared at his side, young, professional, wearing the same dark suit as the other guards. Ready, Señor? Leo stood, legs unsteady from sitting so long. His uniform was finally dry but still wrinkled, still smelling like the club. He wanted to burn it. As Raphael led him toward the exit, Leo looked back one last time. Camillo stood at the bar, phone to his ear again, issuing orders that would ripple through his entire organization. Dismantling corruption. Demanding accountability. Burning down what was broken so something better could grow. He'd stopped for Leo in the rain. Not because he was kind, though maybe he was, in his own way. But because he had standards. Lines he wouldn't cross. Rules even powerful alphas had to follow. And when those rules were broken, he didn't look away. He acted. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sky was beginning to lighten, not quite dawn, but close. The city looked different in the pre-morning gray. Quieter. Almost peaceful. Raphael opened the door to a black sedan, not the SUV from earlier, but similar. Clean. Expensive. Safe. The hotel is 20 minutes away, he said. You can sleep in the car if you want. Leo slid into the back seat, his canvas bag beside him. 70,000 reis in an account he'd barely used. As the car pulled away from the Eclipse Lounge, he watched the building shrink in the side mirror. The neon sign was dark. The doors were locked. Inside, Camillo's team was taking it apart piece by piece. By tomorrow, it would be gone. And Leo Peters, waiter, refuser, survivor, would wake up in a clean bed with enough money to start over. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere safe. Somewhere chosen. Dawn broke over the city like a bruise, purple and gray, bleeding into pale yellow at the edges. Leo woke in a hotel room that smelled like lavender and clean sheets. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the memories came flooding back, the rain, the SUV, Camillo's face in the shadows, the eclipse being dismantled piece by piece. He sat up, checking his phone. 7:43 a.m. Missed calls from a number he didn't recognize. A text from Gabriella, investigation complete. Call when you're awake. Leo dialed. Gabriella answered on the first ring. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months. Good. Are you able to come back to the club? There's something Senor Rios wants you to see. 20 minutes later, Raphael was driving him back through morning traffic. The city looked different in daylight, less menacing, more indifferent. Just concrete and glass and people rushing to jobs that would drain them slowly. When they arrived at the eclipse, Leo barely recognized it. The neon sign was gone, just empty brackets and loose wires. The front windows were covered with official notices, citations, closure orders, seizure documents. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, neighbors whispering behind their hands, trying to figure out what happened. Raphael led him through a side entrance. Inside, the club was a skeleton. The bar had been stripped, bottles removed, glassware packed, even the mirrors taken down. The DJ booth was empty. The VIP section dismantled. Workers in coveralls were pulling up the carpets, exposing stained concrete underneath. Camillo stood in the center of the dance floor, surveying the destruction like a general after a siege. He turned when Leo entered. You came. Gabriella said you wanted to see me. I wanted you to see this. He gestured around the gutted space. So you know it's real. It's not coming back. Leo walked slowly through the room, past the empty bar where he'd spent 8 months, past the hallway that led to the stairs he'd climbed every night. Everything that had felt permanent 12 hours ago was being erased. Where are the boys? He asked. Safe houses. Hotels. 3 went home to their families. 2 are meeting with social services this afternoon. The minors are with child protection services. He paused. Lucas asked about you. Wanted to make sure you were okay. I should call him. He'd like that. Camillo pulled out his phone, sent something. I just forwarded you his number. Gabriella emerged from the back office, carrying a box of files. She set them down carefully. Final count. 147,000 reis in unreported cash. Another 200,000 in withheld wages and fabricated debt payments. And Senor? Leo asked. Being transferred to federal custody within the hour, Gabriella replied. Money laundering, human trafficking, coercion, fraud. He'll be lucky to see daylight in the next decade. What about the regional manager? Augusto. Camillo's expression hardened. He's next. We've identified 6 other locations operating the same way. All under his supervision. All generating revenue through exploitation. 6. Leo's voice came out smaller than he intended. 6 that we know of so far. The audit is ongoing. He looked at Leo directly. This is bigger than one club, Leo. It's systemic. And it ends now. A worker approached, clipboard in hand. Senor Rios. Demo team is ready. Do we have authorization to proceed? Proceed with what? Leo asked. Camillo's jaw tightened. Complete structural renovation. We're gutting the second floor entirely. Every room. Every wall. Every surface that was used to hurt people. You're tearing it down. I'm erasing it. His voice was steel. When this building reopens, if it reopens, it will be something completely different. Something clean. The Eclipse Lounge dies today. The worker waited for confirmation. Camillo nodded. Start with the upstairs rooms. I want them gone first. The worker left. Moments later, the sound of sledgehammers began echoing through the building. Walls crumbling. Debris falling. The physical destruction of what had been a prison for so many. Leo felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. You're the one who had the courage to say no. I'm just doing what I should have done years ago. Paying attention. You didn't know what was happening here. I should have. That's on me. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Leo. Inside were documents. Legal papers. A property deed. Leo's hands shook. What is this? The building where you were staying before the eclipse. I bought it this morning. You have an apartment there now. Paid for 1 year. After that, it's yours if you want it. I can't, this is too much. It's not a gift. It's restitution. His voice softened slightly. You lost your home because of my failure to monitor my own operations. This makes it right. Tears burned behind Leo's eyes. Why are you doing all this? Camillo was quiet for a moment. My brother was trafficked when he was 19. Promised a restaurant job in Sao Paulo. Ended up in a situation not unlike yours. But he didn't have the strength to say no. And by the time I found him, he trailed off. I was too late. He's still alive. But he's not the same. He'll never be the same. I'm sorry. I swore after that I'd never let it happen again. Not in any business I controlled. Not on my watch. He looked around the demolished club. I failed. But I won't fail twice. The sledgehammers continued their work upstairs. The sound was oddly satisfying. Cathartic. What happens to you now? Camillo asked. Leo thought about the apartment. The money in his account. The future that had opened up in front of him like a door he'd thought was locked forever. I don't know. But I get to choose. That's enough. Camillo almost smiled. Yes. It is. The apartment was small but clean. 1 bedroom. A kitchen with actual counter space. Windows that let in real sunlight. Leo stood in the empty living room, his canvas bag on the floor beside him, trying to process that this space was his. No shared walls with exploitation. No music bleeding through at 3 a.m. No men in the hallway making offers that weren't really offers. Just silence, and safety, and choice. His phone buzzed. Lucas. Hello? Leo? The boy's voice was tentative. Gabriella gave me your number. I hope that's okay. Of course. How are you? Scared. But better, I think. They put me in a program. Job training, counseling. They said they'd help me find legitimate work. That's good. That's really good. A pause. I wanted to thank you. For what? For being there last night. For telling the truth even when it was hard. I wouldn't have talked if you hadn't been there. Leo's throat tightened. You would have. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. Neither did I. But we survived. That counts for something. Lucas exhaled shakily. Senor got arrested this morning. Did you hear? I heard. Good. I hope he rots. The venom in his voice was new. Healthy. I hope they all rot. They will. Camillo is making sure of it. He's kind of terrifying. Leo smiled despite himself. Yeah. But in a good way. They talked for a few more minutes, tentative plans to meet for coffee, promises to check in. The fragile beginning of something that might become friendship. When Lucas hung up, Leo felt less alone. He spent the rest of the day making the apartment livable. A trip to a second-hand store yielded a mattress, sheets, basic dishes. A grocery run stocked the refrigerator with real food, not the leftovers and scraps he'd survived on at the club. By evening, the space felt almost like home. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello? Leo Peters? A woman's voice. Professional, warm. Yes. My name is Dr. Carvalho. I'm a therapist specializing in trauma recovery. Senor Rios asked me to reach out. He's arranged for counseling services if you're interested. No pressure, no obligation. Just an option. Leo sat down slowly on his new second-hand couch. He did that? He did. He's covering all costs. You just have to decide if you want to participate. Yes. I think I do. Wonderful. I have an opening tomorrow at 2. Does that work? Yes. Thank you. After she hung up, Leo sat in the gathering darkness, watching the city lights flicker on outside his window. He thought about how different his life looked now compared to 24 hours ago. How close he'd come to disappearing entirely. How one question, what happened, had changed everything. The first counseling session was harder than Leo expected. Dr. Carvalho asked questions that peeled back layers he'd been trying to ignore. About boundaries. About survival. About the difference between choice and coercion. You did nothing wrong, Dr. Carvalho said gently. You understand that, right? Leo wasn't sure he did. But he was starting to. He left the session emotionally raw but strangely lighter. Like setting down weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. On his way home, he passed the Eclipse Lounge. The building was unrecognizable. Construction crews swarmed the exterior. The pink and blue neon was gone completely, replaced by clean white scaffolding. A sign announced future development, Community Resource Center. Opening Fall 2026. Leo stopped walking. A resource center. Not another club. Not another business. Something that would actually help people. He pulled out his phone, found Camillo's number, and called before he could talk himself out of it. He answered immediately. Leo. I saw the sign at the Eclipse. A resource center. Job training, legal aid, counseling services for people who need a fresh start. He paused. Seemed appropriate. It is. It's perfect. I'm glad you think so. Because I'd like you to help run it. Leo's breath caught. What? You know what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn. You know how systems fail people. You'd be valuable in making sure this place actually works. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than you realize. Think about it. No pressure. He stood on the sidewalk, staring at the building that had almost destroyed him, now being transformed into something that might save others. Okay, he said quietly. I'll think about it. When he hung up, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Leo Peters walked home to an apartment that was his, with money in an account he controlled, with options he could choose freely. He walked upright. Head high. No tears. The rain had stopped. And he had survived. Not just survived, he'd refused to break, refused to compromise, refused to accept that cruelty was just the cost of living. One Omega walking alone in the rain. One Alpha who stopped to ask a question. One system that collapsed because someone finally demanded accountability. Some people fall in the rain and disappear. Others change the world because someone stopped to ask why. Leo Peters had done both. And he was just beginning. But there was something else. Something Leo hadn't told anyone. In the car that night, when Camillo's scent had hit him, that devastating mix of cedar and smoke and something darker, Leo's Omega had reacted. Not just with fear. With recognition. With want. He'd suppressed it then, shoved it down deep where he could ignore it. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. The way Camillo's presence had made his skin prickle. The way his instincts had screamed alpha, alpha, safe, alpha even when his mind was screaming danger, run, get away. It didn't make sense. Camillo was dangerous. Powerful. The kind of alpha who could crush him without thinking twice. And Leo had spent years learning to distrust alphas, to see them as threats rather than protectors. But something about Camillo was different. In the days that followed, Leo threw himself into the Resource Center project. Meetings with architects, planning sessions with Gabriella, interviews with potential staff. It kept him busy, kept his mind off the alpha whose face haunted his dreams. Camillo was there too. Not always. He had an empire to run, other locations to audit, other corrupt managers to dismantle. But he showed up often enough. Checking on progress. Offering input. Standing too close when Leo was reviewing blueprints. The first time it happened, Leo almost dropped his coffee. They were in the old VIP section, now stripped down to bare concrete, discussing the layout for the new counseling offices. Camillo leaned over to point at something on the blueprint, and his scent washed over Leo like a wave. Cedar. Smoke. And something else, something warm and possessive that made Leo's knees weak. Leo stepped back instinctively, heart racing. "Are you all right?" Camillo asked, frowning. "Fine. Just, fine." Leo cleared his throat. "I need some air." He fled to the bathroom and locked himself in a stall, breathing hard. What the hell was wrong with him? He'd been around alphas before, worked with them, served them, been harassed by them. None of them had ever affected him like this. It was the bond, he realized. The one he'd been suppressing for years. The one that made Omegas crave alphas, want to submit, want to be claimed. He'd managed to ignore it by keeping his distance, by never letting any alpha get close enough to trigger it. But Camillo was different. Camillo had saved him. Camillo had given him a home, a purpose, a future. And Leo's Omega had latched onto that like a drowning man to a lifeline. It was dangerous. Stupid. Reckless. But he couldn't seem to stop it. Weeks passed. The resource center took shape. Walls went up, floors were laid, furniture was delivered. Leo threw himself into the work, supervising contractors, interviewing counselors, making sure everything was perfect. Camillo stayed away more often. Leo told himself he was relieved. He was lying. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday. Leo was in the new office he'd claimed for himself, going over staff schedules, when the scent hit him. Camillo was nearby. But his scent was different, thicker, heavier, laced with something that made Leo's pulse spike. It wasn't just cedar and smoke anymore. It was need. Desperation. Alpha in distress. Leo's Omega responded instantly. He found Camillo in what would become the main counseling room, standing by the window, his back to the door. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched at his sides. The air around him was thick with pheromones, so strong Leo could taste them on his tongue. Camillo? He didn't turn around. You shouldn't be here. What's wrong? Leo. Leave. His voice was strained, barely controlled. Leo's Omega keened in response. Alpha needs help, Alpha needs us, go to him. I'm not leaving. Camillo turned slowly. His eyes were dark, pupils blown wide. His jaw was tight, muscles working as he struggled to maintain control. Leo. I'm in rut. The words hit Leo like a punch to the gut. Rut. Of course. Camillo was an alpha in his prime, powerful and dominant. It was inevitable. I'll go, Leo said, stepping back. I'll call someone. Don't. Camillo's voice cracked. Don't call anyone. Just go. Lock yourself in your office. Stay there until it passes. Leo hesitated. Everything in him screamed to obey, to protect himself, to get away from the Alpha in rut. But something else screamed louder. Alpha needs you. Alpha chose you. Stay. You saved me, Leo said quietly. You gave me everything. You think I'm just going to leave you like this? Camillo's control shattered. He crossed the room in 3 steps, crowding Leo against the wall. His hands braced on either side of Leo's head, caging him in. His scent was overwhelming now, pouring off him in waves, making Leo's head spin. Leo. His voice was ragged. I've been fighting this since the night I picked you up. I knew what you were the moment I smelled you. Sweet Omega. Alone. Desperate. Everything in me wanted to keep you, claim you, make you mine. Leo's breath caught. Then why didn't you? Because you'd been through enough. Camillo's forehead dropped to rest against Leo's. I wouldn't be another alpha who took what he wanted without asking. You're not, Leo whispered. You're not like them. Leo. I'm in rut. If I kiss you now, I won't be able to stop. I'll mark you. Bond you. Make you mine forever. You understand that, right? You're not just giving me your body. You're giving me everything. Leo reached up, his hand trembling, and touched Camillo's face. Then take it. Camillo made a sound, almost a growl, almost a sob, and then his mouth was on Leo's, and everything else disappeared. The kiss was desperate, hungry, the kind of kiss that felt like a claim. Camillo's hands found Leo's waist, pulling him close, and Leo melted into him like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Camillo pulled back just long enough to breathe. I need you to tell me this is what you want. Not because I'm in rut. Not because you're grateful. Because you want this. Leo met his eyes. I want this. I want you. And then he bared his neck. It was the most vulnerable thing an Omega could do, offering their throat to an Alpha. It was the ultimate sign of trust. Of surrender. Camillo's breath hitched. Leo. Claim me, Leo whispered. Make me yours. Camillo claimed him in the middle of the empty counseling room, surrounded by the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. The bond took hold immediately, hot and fierce and undeniable. Leo felt it like a brand on his soul, like a door opening in his chest that had been locked his whole life. Camillo held him through it, murmuring soft words in Portuguese, his hands gentle even when everything else was intense. And when it was over, he kept holding him, pressed against the wall, both of them breathing hard. Fuck, Camillo whispered. Leo. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Don't. Leo kissed the corner of his mouth. Don't apologize. This is what I wanted. You're not just saying that because... I'm saying it because it's true. Leo looked up at him, smiling. I've been wanting this since the night you picked me up. I was just too scared to admit it. Camillo exhaled slowly. His hand came up to touch Leo's face, tracing the new bond mark on his throat. I didn't plan this, he said. I wasn't looking for an omega. But then you showed up, soaking wet, crying in the rain, and I couldn't let you go. Something about you. Something about me, Leo agreed. Same. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other. Leo could feel the bond humming between them, warm and steady. It felt right. Like coming home. So what happens now? Leo asked. Camillo smiled, a real smile, not the cold, controlled expression Leo was used to. Now we finish the resource center. You run it. I make sure no one ever hurts you again. And we figure out the rest together. Leo's omega purred, actually purred, at the words. Together. Such a simple word. It meant everything. And the other boys? Leo asked. The ones who were hurt? Camillo's expression sobered. They get the same thing you got. Fresh starts. Safety. A chance to rebuild. He kissed Leo's forehead. I can't undo what happened to them. But I can make sure it never happens to anyone else. That's why I'm doing this, not just for you. For all of them. Leo leaned into him, breathing in his scent. It was different now, softer, mixed with Leo's own, honey and flowers, sweet and warm. I know, Leo said. That's why I trust you. Months passed. The Community Resource Center opened to the public, offering job training, legal aid, counseling, and safe housing for trafficking survivors. Leo ran it with fierce dedication, making sure no one was ever turned away. Lucas got his ID sorted, found a legitimate job, and started sending money home to his mother without fear. He still called Leo once a week, checking in, updating him on his life. He was making friends. Building something new. Beatrice, the boy who'd been forced upstairs, eventually came forward and testified against Senor. He was terrified, but Leo went with him to court, holding his hand the whole time. Senor was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Augusto, the regional manager, was arrested 2 months later, after investigators traced the trafficking network through 6 different cities. Camillo's team worked with federal authorities to dismantle the entire operation, rescuing dozens of omegas and betas who'd been trapped in the same nightmare. And Camillo and Leo, they built something together. Not just the resource center. A life. A home. A bond that grew stronger with every passing day. The first time Leo went into heat after the bonding, Camillo took a week off work and spent every moment with him. He was patient, gentle, and utterly devoted, nothing like the ruthless alpha who'd confronted Senor that night in the club. But maybe that was the point. Camillo had different faces for different situations. With Leo, he was soft. With the rest of the world, he was steel. What are you thinking about? Camillo asked one evening, lying in bed with Leo curled against his chest. Leo smiled. The rain. That night. The way you rolled down your window and asked. What happened? Camillo finished. Yeah. I remember. You didn't even know me. You just stopped. Camillo kissed his hair. Best decision I ever made. Leo tilted his head up, meeting his alpha's eyes. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for trusting me. Camillo's voice was low, sincere. For saying yes. for giving me a chance. I'd do it again, Leo said. Every time. Camillo smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that Leo had learned was only for him. Good. Because I'm not letting you go. They lay there in the quiet, the bond humming between them, warm and steady and right. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. But in this room, there was peace. Leo drifted off to sleep, safe in his alpha's arms, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The end.